Well, as you saw just then in Deborah's report, earlier I did speak to the Defence Secretary, John Healey. Thank you very much for being on the programme. So you've launched your defence review. You said we need to balance national security with sound public finances. So when are you going to set a date then for when you can reach that target of spending 2.5% of GDP on defence?
So it was the Prime Minister that's launched the Defence Review today. He's described it as one of these first acts leading this new government. It's this government getting on with the job. And we'll conduct our strategic defence review. Alongside that, we'll settle the question of our manifesto commitment to raise defence spending to 2.5%, and that'll be done in the normal way, led by the Treasury through a fiscal event.
So when are you going to get what's the timing of it then, when we're going to get the time frame?
Well, that'll be led on the 2.5 by the Treasury, but that was a unique commitment in our manifesto, raising UK defence spending to 2.5%. It's not been at that level since 2010 with Labour, and we're doing that because we face increasing threats around the world, and that's why we're doing the strategic defence reviews.
You say it will be led by the Treasury. Will you commit to following any recommendations of this review then? You know, if they say we should increase inside of the army, will you then do that?
Well, one of the features about this review that the Prime Minister's launched today, which he's asked me to oversee, is that it will be led by a former Secretary-General of NATO, Lord Robertson. So you've got three expert external reviewers.
That's not really an answer to my question, though, is
it? Well, it is.
I guess I'm trying to work out, are you in charge or is it Rachel Reeves and the Treasury?
No. The Prime Minister's asked me to run this defence review. I'm overseeing it. It'll be headed by Lord Robertson. It's the first of its kind in the UK to be done in this way. Three expert external reviewers working with the deep internal experience that there is in the MOD and the armed forces and the rest of government. And we've done that so we can think afresh to deal with the threats that we face, make some assessment of the capabilities that we need, and get to grips with the rapidly changing nature of warfare today, which we see in Ukraine every day.
Yeah, you're talking about the kind of rapidly changing world. I think everyone would, agree with that. It's very clear in the US in particular. Donald Trump, of course, has one of his first kind of acts, if you like, has picked JD Vance as his running mate, a guy who could have a huge amount of influence if he does win the presidency. He said this about the UK. We were talking about what's the first truly Islamist country to get a nuclear weapon. Maybe it's Iran, maybe it's Pakistan, maybe they already count. And then we decided maybe it's actually the UK since Labour just took over.
Well, I don't think anyone here in Britain would recognise that caricature. Look,
politics it's offensive, isn't it?
Well, politics is controversial. You know, President Trump is controversial. It should be no surprise he's picked somebody who's also controversial as a running mate. Look, in the end, who the American people elect to be their president and vice president is for them. We, Britain, as we've always done in this very close alliance between the UK and the US, we will work with whoever the American people elect as their leaders. And this strong relationship at the heart of NATO, a 32-nation alliance, has seen through some ups and downs of political cycles on both sides of the Atlantic before.
I know you want to be careful here. You've got to kind of have the sort of diplomatic niceties. I get that. But you mentioned Ukraine earlier in this interview. JD Vance could have a huge impact, and Trump potentially, over what happens in Ukraine. In 2022, he said, I don't really care what happens in Ukraine one way or another. He also says he wants a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia and that Ukraine perhaps needs to accept that it's not going to get all of its territory back. Is that a position that you agree with?
Well, let's see what the American people do at their election. But we've launched this strategic defence review to maintain the momentum of a very successful NATO summit.
Do you agree with JD Vance on Ukraine?
No, look, my point to you is this. A NATO summit last week in Washington, for the first time, 32 nations together, bigger, stronger, more unified, with Ukraine involved, all standing together and stepping up support for Ukraine.
Some people might be thinking they don't believe you when you're saying that you're backing Ukraine if you won't even call out JD Vance when he's saying that actually, yeah, maybe they should just give up, Crimea and start having peace talks with Putin. You won't call it out.
If people question or want to know the measure of our support for Ukraine, my second day in the job, I was in Odessa. I spent the afternoon with President Zelensky and his team. I pledged that we'll speed up the military aid that had already been pledged. We've stepped it up with more since then. We've said that we'll support them with $3 billion a year this year and every year for the rest of the decade, and we will work with them to see how we can help them in their fight against Putin's illegal invasion and how we can help also lead other allies to do more to support them.
OK, thank you very much.
Thank you.